First of all, appreciate everybody coming out. Literally just landed a plane like 15 minutes ago, so it's been a sprint, it's been chaos. Things are going good. I had a 3-minute meeting with Todd Kolka to get updated kind of where we're at academically, and looks like we're in a good place there. We're still waiting for some grades to come in, so looking forward to making sure that all our guys are in a great place academically and either have graduated or continue to work towards graduation, so getting that stuff in. Obviously, game planning, I think we're in a pretty good place. Our GA's done a great job of breaking all the film down. We had the coordinators off the road for a couple days to finalize some of the game plan with some of the assistant coaches. We'll continue to kind of iron that out over the next couple days. As you guys know, we typically will do a full week of practice at the bowl site, and then we'll do a couple bonus days here before we leave and iron out a few of the last details. It's kind of interesting kind of looking at all these different bowl models. I think I mentioned to you guys before that in the past, Penn State used to go for 2 weeks, a week at the bowl site, and then a week of practice. And it was me and Matt Limegrover were talking in the car. When he was at Northwestern, they did the same thing because they didn't have an indoor facility. So they would go out to the site to get better practices. So there's a lot of different models in how you do things, but I like where we're at. I like where we're at from a planning perspective, from a health perspective. As you guys can imagine, we had a bunch of guys as the season goes on with bumps and bruises and things like that. So we're in a much healthier place right now. Guys have still been kind of lifting and things like that on their own. We've had great developmental practices, which is really good for our staff development with our young coaches like graduate assistants and things like that. Running practice as well as our 3s and 4s, getting a bunch of reps. It allows us to get the older guys a little bit more rest and continue to develop our entire roster. And then obviously, we've had all the staff, situations to deal with. So Coach Moorhead is at Mississippi State doing a great job, and Coach Huff has got an opportunity there as well. And then obviously there's some other whispers and rumors and things going on as well. And to me, I take that as a compliment. To me, it's our job, number one, to make sure that our players get a great education. It's our job to make sure our guys have a great athletic experience and hopefully have opportunities to continue to play at the next level once they graduate here in the NFL. That's part of our responsibility as well. And then it's also part of our responsibility to develop our staff and allow coaches to grow and sometimes get opportunities to move on and be head coaches. So that's great as well. So, but for me, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. A lot of moving parts with graduation and grades, a lot of moving parts with recruiting and the ups and downs of that, and then also from a staff perspective. So I like where we're at. I'm glad to be back in town, see my family, have a practice here in a little bit later on today, and get back to some form of normalcy, whatever you would call that in college football.
Open up to questions here in the room. Raise your hand, look at a mic to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How important has Brent Pry been to your staff, and has he discussed possibilities at other schools with you in the last day or so?
Yeah, we talk all the time. We were in a car together for about a day and a half, and we talk all the time, about everything, about his family, about his career, about Penn State, about other opportunities. But Brent's my guy. Brent's obviously been a valued part of our staff for since day one, for 7 years. He's one of my best friends, and I love his family and his wife. And it's the hard thing for me is, I kind of feel split. I want what's best for Brent Pry and his family, but I also want what's best for Penn State and Penn State football. So I'm kind of conflicted on that, personally and professionally. But like I told Brent, he's in a great situation. You know, he's got a great job at a great place that he loves. And you know, whenever you have really good people that are talented at what they do, people are going to pursue them. You know, in some ways, be able to try to steal some of our success that we've had the last couple of years. So I take it as a tremendous compliment for our program. But me and Brent have had a lot of conversations.
Hey James, curious on how the early signing date adds a layer of challenge with coaches that are coming and going and being discussed, and you're trying to button up a recruiting class at the same time.
Yeah, I think for us, I've been very open about staff change. When guys committed to us months ago, I told them they need to be committing to Penn State, the university, our football program, and me. I want to keep the staff together for as long as we possibly can. But there's going to be some of that in college football. For me to say that there isn't, would not be truthful. So I think for the most part, our guys, we've had multiple conversations before this, and then as things come up, I communicate with them. But for us, I actually think the early signing period, the 20th, I'm a fan of it. I think it's a positive. I'm not a fan of the early visits that are going to start next spring. That I have concerns about, because I just, we need to be able to do a great job with our current players and our program and our roster. And then the coaches still need to have some time where they can be husbands and dads and fathers and those types of things. And I'm a little concerned about that. But I think there is a sense of urgency with ADs and with coaches. When you lose the head coach, that's a different situation. I think that is really challenging. But I think for some programs like Penn State that have a lot of stability, I don't see it. I see it as positive for us.
James, to your left, what is it that you like about the early signing period, and do you see that becoming permanent?
Yeah, I think it is permanent. I don't think this is a trial basis. Well, I think what happens is, I think in major college football for a long time now, I'd say 85% of your recruiting class has been committed for 9 months. So there's an aspect of it towards the end where you're just kind of going and checking on a guy that you really don't need to be checking on. He's solid, his family's solid, his high school coach is solid, and they're coming, but you still feel like you need to keep going back and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Me and Matt Limegrove were just talking on the ride in. He called a kid just a little bit ago and said, "Hey, I'd like to come to." He was talking to the dad and said, "I'd like to come to the house Wednesday." And the dad was like, "Why?" And he's like, I just want to make sure that that we've got everything covered and you guys are really comfortable and feel good about this whole process." And he's like, "Coach, I could not be more comfortable, and I really don't want you coming to the house again. Like, leave us alone," type of deal. So I think there's some benefits to it that you can get those guys signed. They're sick of the process at this point now as well, to be honest with you. In the beginning, recruiting is awesome and it sounds great, and by the end, everybody's had enough of it. So it allows you to kind of move on from those guys and start filling the last few spots you have and start working on that next recruiting class and those types of things. So. It's funny, I was telling a kid the other day on the phone and his parents, really this process can be as easy as you want to make it to be or as hard as you want it to be. And, I look at the kids that have been committed to us for a long time and their families. We go do the home visit. Like, I only get to go once, so when I go to do the home visit, those kids, it's like a celebration of their high school careers and a celebration of their future. I was at one the other night. It was 30 people in the basement, and it was like, what was it, the Thirst, downtown? I mean, the First, is that what it is? The Thirst First. I've never been there, but you guys get the point. You know, it was like a party in his basement. And to me, that's what it should be. And then I see other guys and they're like stressed out. You know, so I think there's some benefits to the 20th of being able to kind of get those situations over so you truly know where you're at.
James, how you doing?
You got a haircut?
Yeah, I did.
Looks nice.
Thank you. Hey, just to be clear, because there's so much info that kind of spins around, we don't know what to believe. Do you expect to have Brent for the bowl game, and will he be here today? And one other question while I'm asking, do you expect to have Manny Bowen available for the bowl game?
Brent will be here today. I'm looking forward to seeing him. Will not have Manny Bowen for the bowl game.
James, as far as Saquon, different guys have decided not to play, McCaffrey, Fournette, Freeman. Take us through that process, what communication you had with him to come to the decision that, yes, he'll play in this bowl game.
It's not my decision. And as you guys know, we got into this a couple weeks ago. I don't really love the question. I get that you got to ask it. I don't love the question, but it's not my decision. Saquon's made a decision. We didn't really have a whole lot of conversation about it. We've had a little bit of conversation probably last year, but I don't really kind of get into that one a whole lot, and I don't really love the whole topic, to be honest with you. I get it. I understand there's a business aspect to this as well, and we have to be aware of those types of things, but we're excited about going to play the University of Washington in the Fiesta Bowl as a team.
Good afternoon. Hey, just wanted to clarify Mark's question. Do you expect Manny, moving forward, to still be a part of the team after the Fiesta Bowl?
Manny Bowen will not be available for the bowl game.
Okay. And also, we saw that Tommy Stevens is now listed as his own Lion position. What kind of went into that? Just coming up with that? Is that something Ricky did, or just something you guys finally wanted to maybe put out there?
Yeah, we just, we want to treat him like a starter because that's really what he is for us. Talking to our defensive coaches, talking to our offensive coaches, we see his role expanding. Especially now that we're in a situation where we're creating more and more depth at the quarterback position. I mean, last year, very similar to Trace, our third team quarterback was redshirting. He preferred, to leave it that way. But Tommy creates some opportunities for us and creates some matchup problems for us, and that's something he has wanted to do. He has brought up in the past about playing special teams. He's brought up in the past about playing defense. He's brought up in the past about coaching. He's brought up in the past about everything. He just wants to have as big of a role as he possibly can, and the reality is it makes sense. It makes sense. So and I thought it made sense to list him on here as a starter because that's kind of how we view him, and that's how his teammates view him, and we expect his role to continue to grow. And literally, when I say offense, defense, and special teams, I'm serious about that. I mean, there's really nothing off the table in terms of his opportunity to have a bigger role on our team.
Hey, Frank.
Happy holidays, James. How you doing?
Tell you what, thank you very much.
Sure, absolutely. I just want to ask you, what was the conversation like between you and Ricky when you decided to promote him to offensive coordinator? And then, as a former coordinator yourself, how long does it take to develop a personality or a style as a play caller?
Yeah, me and Ricky have been talking about these things, for 10 years. As you guys know, he called the bowl game a couple years ago when Trace, I think, threw his first touchdown pass. So I knew this is something that was a goal of his, in his future. As you guys know, we've talked about in the past how we do our spring games. It gives me an opportunity to kind of evaluate guys as well with their calling. Typically, the 2 or 3 offense against the 1 defense on both sides of the ball. That's part of it. And then just really, it's funny because I tell our GAs, I tell our coaches, I'm not a big believer in resumes. I'm not a big believer, you know, in you know, interviews. I get it, you know, especially with people that you don't know. I get that, but the reality is, Ricky Ronnie has been interviewing for this position since he was a graduate assistant for me at Kansas State. Ricky was the offensive graduate assistant, and Scott Frost was the defensive graduate assistant on our staff at Kansas State. So he's been preparing and interviewing for this responsibility for a long time. You know, so yeah, is there going to be some adjustments? Is it going to look exactly the way it's looked in the past? Is there going to be time for growth as an offense and for coaches and for, yeah, no doubt about it. Our offense didn't look exactly the same, you know, in the last 2 years. It's constantly evolving. So yeah, I think all those things, you know, factor into it. The way we do things, you know, offensively and defensively, is guys script parts of practice. He's been doing that for a while. Same thing on the defensive side of the ball. So you know, there'll be an adjustment period. There's no doubt about it. But I would make the argument there's less of an adjustment period doing it this way. That was a big part of, you know, doing this. Do I go out and hire someone from the outside? But when you do that, they're gonna expect, and you're gonna expect them to run their offense. You know, you don't have them come in and run what you're doing, because that's not how they were successful. They were successful running their system. So this allows us to continue to build what we're building here. I also thought it was the right thing to do for Trace and Tommy, the rest of our quarterbacks, because they're very comfortable and confident in this system right now. And then also the fact that Ricky recruited every quarterback, you know, in that room. You know, I think it just allows us to continue to keep building. So it'll be a process, but you know, I'm obviously very confident, or wouldn't have done it.
Jed.
James in the back here. Is there similarities with Washington and USC? Last year you kind of, you know, they're in the same conference. Are there things that you're picking up with Washington that might be similar to, you know, preparing like last year?
Yeah, I think there's some similarities whenever you play a team from the same conference, unless they're a team that, you know, is really different in style. So yeah, I think there are some similarities in terms of how the Pac-10, 11, 12, Big Ten, 11, 12, you know, how we play. And there's different styles. So yes, I think there's some of that, but you know, at the end of the day, it's evaluating their roster, you know, evaluating the film, how they play, you know, how they call their offense. They've had to change, you know, offensively as well, their coordinator position. You know, it's funny, I was just talking about, you know, Ricky and Scott Frost, and then Bush Hamden, who was a graduate assistant, you know, for us as well, has been hired from the Atlanta Falcons to be their offensive coordinator. Won't do it for the bowl game, so you know, they've had a little bit of that as well. But yeah, I think there's some similarities from a conference standpoint, but you know, we're mainly focused on Washington and what we've seen on tape the last 4 or 5 games of the year, and make sure that we're watching the tapes and the games that probably have the most similarities to us. You know, they're the games that are most valuable.
Good.
James, what have you seen of Miles Sanders the last 2 years that assures you that he'll be able to take a larger role if and when that opportunity arises?
I don't know if anything assures you. You know, we're excited about Saquon and his future. Excuse me, we're excited about Miles and his future, and obviously he's done a really good job, you know, behind Saquon Barkley, and when he got opportunities, you know, really running with it. You really see every aspect of his game, you know, over the last 2 years, really developing, from ball security, from pass protection, in terms of just getting bigger and stronger. I mean, you look at him the other day, I mean, his lower body development, it's impressive, you know, to look at him. You know, the game comes natural for him. He's got some areas that I think, you know, he's going to need to work on, no different than every other player in our program. But, you know, I look at it a little bit like, you know, when I was in Green Bay, we had Brett Favre, and we drafted Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron was able to come there and sit behind Brett for a couple of years and learn and take it all in. I mean, how many times do you see in that league, you know, guys get drafted in the first round and they're forced to play, and sometimes they're not ready. You know, so I look at that a little bit like with Miles. He's been fortunate, you know, to sit behind a great player and a great person and a great leader, and learn from him, and, you know, allow himself to kind of, you know, evolve, you know, into the job. You know, and then obviously you got Mark Allen and you got JT and you got Journey Brown. And, you know, there's a bunch of guys, you know, that are going to have opportunities to, you know, to battle for that playing time. And the other thing is, you know, I had a conversation with some of the running backs the other day. Is, you know, we're not even sure how the model is going to look. I think they all assume it's going to be just like it was, you know, this past year. Well, you know, we kind of had an unusual situation, you know, where I think, you know, you could be in a situation where you have a little bit more rotation than we had last year. So, you know, kind of probably more of how we did it the first couple of years.
Time for 2 more.
James, since we'll get a chance to talk with Phil today, how long have you known that you wanted him to be part of your staff in some capacity? Because obviously what he was doing last year drastically different. And also, how has the transition gone with getting him in with the specialists and out recruiting and everything?
Yeah, you know, Phil's a guy that I knew kind of from a distance. You know, actually, him and Sean Spencer, you know, go way back. You know, Sean coached Phil at Shippensburg, I think. And then, you know, we had an opportunity to bring him here. Obviously, he had a lot of success at Rutgers. Then was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and just a lot of experience. He's also another Pennsylvania guy. He's got a lot of ties. We have a lot of, you know, similar people, you know, that we both know. We both grew up in the same, basically in the same conference of high schools that play against each other. And then I just kind of been around him. He's got tremendous experience. He's really passionate, and he's a really sharp guy. You know, so his family was living in the Bethlehem, Allentown area, so they're going to be moving to town, which is awesome. But again, once again, you know, when you can have some people that are already on your, you know, staff and you can promote from within, I think that's the ideal, you know, situation whenever you can do it. And we were fortunate to be able to get, you know, Phil here in this role because it made sense for him and it made sense for us. You know, so now when we transition, he already knows how we run special teams meetings. He already knows, you know, how we practice. He knows our personnel. He knows our coaches. He knows, you know, overall philosophy. And again, is Phil going to tweak a few things? Yeah, I expect him to. But it really kind of helps in the transition rather than bringing somebody from the outside in, and then it takes time between their system and how we do things culturally and philosophically. It helps. You know, so, you know, I'm not saying that every hire that we make over the next 20 years are always going to be internal candidates, but when you have one, I think it makes a lot of sense for everybody involved.
Correct.
With all of your bowl game experiences in your career, would you say that how would you compare finishing one season strong versus the bowl game can be a springboard for the next season? What are the benefits for both of those?
So the first part, what do you think?
With all of the experiences you've had, is a bowl game more important to finish one season strong and put a cap on one season, or to start to build toward the next season and have, you know, positive experiences going into spring ball and everything?
Yes.
How would you compare the benefits of both of those then?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously you always want to end, you know, on a positive note. You know, there's very few teams at the end of the season that end happy. You know, really you got one that's truly happy. You know, it's interesting just talking to recruits and being on the road and kind of looking back and having some time for some perspective. I mean, you know, we lost 2 games this year by 4 points, and I think if you go all the way back to after the Michigan game last year, I think we lost 3 by like 7 or something like that. So, you know, you want to end the season on a positive note. You want those seniors to have that, you know, that last experience of being a real positive one that they can you know, savor for the rest of their lives. You know, you prefer the coaches not to, you know, go into the off season with a bad taste in their mouth, and the fans and the media members and the administration. You want to end on a positive note. You want to be successful. You want to be 1-0. I don't think there's any doubt about the importance of that. And then obviously I do think there is some momentum that kind of leads you into the next year. And I think that's tied to the whole bowl experience, the extra practices, the extra time, just the good vibes of going away to a different environment for your players to experience something different. I'm going to ask today to try to find out how many of our players have ever been to Arizona before. All those things, I think, there's a lot of unique experiences through college athletics and through college football that are important. So, I think it does both. I think it's important that you end the season on a positive note so everybody feels good. And there's good mojo. And then obviously I do think it has an impact of going into the following season as well, based on all the things I just mentioned, the extra practices, the last time people have seen you, kind of how they view you. And then people start talking about your returning players and the previous season and the bowl game, how it ended.